Take a world tour with me before we have prayer and get underway here. Take a very quick spin on the globe. There are many religions. And then there are sects or variances within each religion, just like in Christianity or Islam or whatever. And what you have to do is ponder this matter for a while and ask a simple question. What does a person have to do? How does a person obtain salvation? And if you'll go around the world, you'll find that almost every religion, including much of Christianity, insists that you have to do something in order to obtain salvation. You have to belong to the right church. You have to believe the right doctrines. You have to... Are you listening? And what I have done is just lift all of the verses out of Scripture in the order in which they are presented in the Word. And I'm asking you to listen to the music that we just shared and read the Bible as it reads. That's all I'm asking. I put these words on the board. The end of a journey. That's a trip down south. The end of a journey is the whole purpose of the journey. We're all on a journey. Whether we know it or not, recognize it or not, your life, ever how long or short it may be, is a journey. Everyone's on a journey. But the lot of humanity is on a journey. And if I were to ask you for one word, a one-word summation of the journey that we're on, I won't wait on you. It's salvation. What is salvation? It's out of here. That's what salvation means. I would like to get out of here as quickly as possible, as painlessly as possible. Right?
That's right.
And on the way out, somebody cover up the real me so nobody sees any more of the real me, including myself when I look in the mirror. And that is exactly what heaven is holding out. Out of here. No more of the nonsense that we call life down here. No more pain. And no more ugly me. I won't say ugly you.
Why not?
Because in the moving, there's an erasing. God help us. The Bible calls it a blotting out. So the me on the other side is the happy me, the clean me, the upright me, not the me over here. And when you read these verses through, and I challenge you to do so, don't just scan them, read them as they read. You will find that there's absolutely nothing that you do to get your name into the book of life. When I joined the Baptist faith, I had exactly the same understanding that I had when I joined the Adventist faith. When you've gone down the aisle and confessed Jesus, when you've gone under the water and been baptized, when you've done this, then angels sing in heaven and one of them writes your name in the book of life. It ain't so. It is not so. The Scripture is abundantly clear that every name, yours and mine, before we ever came along, was written from the foundation of the world in the Lamb's Book of Life. You may be an accident for your mom and dad, but you are not an accident to God. When this came to me, my mind went back 30 years to Southern California. Big meetings. 1,000, 2,000 people. And I said, look, You guys are living in a dreamland down here. You're drinking somebody else's water down here. You've got 9 million people in LA, plus all the other scattered around in the little satellite whatever. And your water comes from where? 3 states away, 4 states away. You're dreaming. Now, I shared some of those thoughts and ideas with a lot of people. Only a few that I know of decided, I'm going to move from Southern California to Arizona where there's lots of water. Some were wise enough to know that if you find grass and trees, there's some water. And some of them bought properties that make sense. See. And then when I got a little further north in California, up around Sacramento, up there, they call it Central California or whatever. But anyhow, you get there and you're in the Central Valley, and there's everything the world could ever want growing there. And it's gorgeous beyond words. And so I said to the folk up there, well, you've got food and you've got water, you've got company. Because when things get bad down there, they come in your way. Well, today, going north doesn't help. Why not? Because California and parts of the West are in severe drought. I'm not telling you anything. You got fires all the way up here now. Early in the season. Because there's dryness. And all it takes is a good strike of lightning to set the whole thing off. And I don't have to tell you any of this. I said, Tony, I want to I just want a few lines out of this article. So you and I can get our feet on the ground, know what we're talking about. The U.S. is hardly alone when it comes to drought. A worldwide weather phenomena threatens the future of water and food supplies as well as the global economy, experts say. There's Colombia in South America, there's Pakistan, there's Somalia in Africa, there's Australia, there's Guatemala, there's China and Kenya, are just a few of the other countries suffering severe drought conditions. In a moment you're going to find out, well, there's always been drought. This is different. Now this is very personal. The difference is the poles are trying to shift. You know all of this. You know that the magnetic North Pole is shifting rather dramatically. And this affects the weather patterns on the rock. And the weather patterns are not looking friendly. In a moment you're going to see that the experts don't see meaningful rain in the near future for California and much of the West because of these shifting patterns. The effect of droughts happen over time and aren't just a simple event, said Lynn Wilson, academic chair at Kaplan University and environmental researcher. When it comes to food and having safe drinking water, water is not an unlimited resource. Droughts have plagued the earth for centuries. So what's new? Well, cost projections from the drought are hard to pin down, but the World Economic Forum says that drought across the globe costs $6 to $8 billion a year from losses in agriculture and related businesses. In California alone, well-documented drought will cost the state $2.2 billion, put some 17,000 agricultural workers out of a job this year. Now wait just a minute. There's a flood from south of the border. And why are they flooding north? Come on. Want a check from Uncle so-and-so. And the other is, they won't work. They haven't got it down there. They want it up here. They're not going to find it anymore. Now, if you've managed to get that far north and you can't find a job, oh, let's go home. Do you folk really understand that there is a mind, there is a power behind all of this that is stacking the deck? 17,000 agricultural workers out of a job this year. This just came out a week or so ago. According to a study from the University of California, Davis, California is easily the biggest agricultural producing state in the United States. That is true. A lack of rain is scorching the southern and northern regions of China, where some of the lowest rainfall on record has cut corn and rice yields. In Australia, livestock and agricultural production have declined 80% of Queensland. If you've ever been to Australia, Queensland is north. And north on that side of the world is where it gets warm. And south is where it gets cold. If you've been to Queensland, Queensland is where they get plenty of rain. And they grow lots and lots and lots of, In Queensland, the second most populous state in Australia, is in drought. In Colombia, South America, the government has established new water rationing regulations. In the coastal and Andean regions, the government there said the worst of the drought is yet to come. Now, why did I want you to see this right away this morning? Okay? Let's see, the disciples came to Jesus privately, it says, and they said, how can we know when this time comes? How can we know? Well, he said, there will be famine. Right? Now, what causes famine? Drought. This arrived a day after the first article. What's the scariest thing about California's record drought? Want to know the scariest thing about California's historic drought? It is not that last year was the state's driest since the start of record keeping, way back in 1895. Or that this year is set to be even drier. Nor is it the fact that the drought is so bad that cities are imposing $500 per day fines for those who are violating water restrictions, watering their lawns, washing their cars, taking a bath. It isn't that thousands of acres of tender, dry forests have gone up in flames, that fish and wildlife communities are being devastated, or that orchards and vineyards are being bulldozed, fields are lying fallow, rivers are drying up, thousands of workers are losing their livelihoods, or that food prices are rising as a result. There's a far scarier aspect to California's drought. We are facing the worst drought impact that we or our grandparents have ever seen. State Water Board Chair Felicia Marcus said July the 15th, and more important, we have no idea when it will end. This drought's impacts are being felt by communities top to bottom in California. The Golden State suffers from a 3-year drought that shows no signs of ending. The state's major reservoirs are nearing crisis proportions. What's scary is, I'm afraid a whole bunch of those folks in California are going to learn how to spell Alabama and know how to get there. There isn't a single major reservoir within the entire state of California at or above its historical average. Not one. Why don't they tell? What they don't tell is where it's going to be tomorrow. That's the scariest thing about California's drought. And the reason they don't tell you where it's going to be tomorrow is because they don't know. They just know things have gone haywire. How about another week-old headline? The World Wildlife Fund, all of this is under the UN. The World Wildlife Fund, the world has lost more than half its wildlife in the last 40 years. Fish, animals, birds. I'm a bird watcher. I like animals, and you know. And I can tell you from one year to the next, the bird populations are dropping dramatically. Because I know when it's time to migrate south and I know when it's time to migrate north, they show up on my bird feeders. And I take my own census. And when it's time for nesting season, they come in. I used to have 40 pair of indigo bunting. This year I had 1 pair. And birds have this way of coming back to the same place. So do porpoises. Are you listening? Half the wildlife on planet Earth has disappeared in the last 40 years. The world's animal population has halved in 40 years as humans put unsustainable demands on Earth. A new report warns humans need 1.5 Earths to sustain their current demands. If you know how to make more land, please let me know. The index, which draws on research around the WWF's database of 3,000 animal species, is released every 2 years. This year's has the starkest warning yet of the risks associated with the decline of wildlife. The fund notes that it's relying on a never-before-used methodology in this year's report, which aims to be more representative of global biodiversity. You want to talk about money? All of these are within the last 7 to 14 days. The U.S. dollar is dying an ugly death. The U.S. government knows it, and the bankers who run the U.S. government are certainly aware of it, since they are the ones who've already undermined its value to worthlessness, in spite of what the headlines might say. Naturally, the dollar's ugly death is never mentioned in the corporate media, even with the manipulation chokehold which this banking cabal has over our so-called markets. It would be extremely difficult to pump up the value of the dollar to its present absurdly fraudulent level. And it's, this morning, I looked it up this morning, it's 86.64 or something like that. In other words, the dollar this morning, using their method, is worth 86.64 cents. If you don't understand how this works, it is you drive the price of commodities way down. Oil, down. Gold, down. Silver, down. And if you drive the price of commodities down, it makes the dollar look real good up here. If there's ever a glitch in this manipulation, everything is reversed almost overnight, and the price of commodities goes way up here, and the value of your dollar goes. Its present absurdly fraudulent level, if everyone knew that this was a dying currency, which will be obsolete and thus officially worthless in a few years' time. I don't buy the few years. All this is carved in stone. What has previously been the subject of considerable debate and speculation is what currency will replace the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency. The crooked bankers and corrupt governments of the Western Bloc have already floated several trial balloons in their efforts to attempt to maintain control over the global economy by being in complete control of the principal money supply for the global economy. More about that later in the day. I knew when I would come again to the Northwest, we would have some seniors here. I'm glad I'm not a senior. We would have some seniors present today. This one came over the line this week, and I said, it's not so much reading, it's just understanding what you're looking at. These states impose the highest taxes on retirees, according to Kiplinger's 2014 analysis of state taxes. 5 of them treat Social Security benefits just like Uncle Sam, taxing up to 85%. Exemptions for other types of retirement income are limited or non-existent. So when I looked at that, the first thing I wanted to see was that Alabama was not among the worst. That's, I was preparing to move. Now, California, I knew already. The only reason they call it the Golden State is they took all your gold away.
Amen.
I'm listening to folk on a fairly regular basis talk about, well, if I get this money, I don't pay 49.3 or 4% maximum tax, income tax. Not in California. Folk in California are looking at 66% tax. And a little later on in the morning or early in the afternoon, we're going to talk about some new taxes, which President O has imposed very quietly. It's like, let's vote this bill through so we can find out what's in it.
Yeah.
Just a lot of things going on. The top combined federal and state capital gains tax rate in California is 33%. That's according to the Tax Foundation, almost 10 percentage points higher than the Fed's top 23.8% tax rate on such profits. That's on profits. Most retirees keep a close watch on their expenses, and they tend to vote in large numbers. That may explain why lawmakers in several states have attempted to make their environs more welcoming for older residents. In the past year, Maine increased the amount of pension income that's excluded from state taxes. Nebraska boosted its exemption for Social Security income starting in 2015. Now, the real problem here is Maine and Nebraska are too close to the North Pole to suit me. This one I'm going to talk about a little later in the day. Some of you have heard the name of Ron Wyatt before. Well, Ron and I were friends and acquaintances for several years. And I was early on among Ron's acquaintances to hear about his discovery of Noah's Ark. I can tell you that I've known Ron a long time. He's deceased, of course. But I knew Ron for quite a number of years, and I knew he had what's the guy in the movies that's out always looking for the Ark? Or Indiana Jones. That's it. I mean, Ron Wyatt was the Indiana Jones of Adventism, let me tell you. And he could spin some yarns. Sometimes he was right on. Sometimes he thought he was right on, but anyhow, I was among the first to hear some of Ron's reports about, we found the Ark. We found the Ark. And then, of course, the doubters and the skeptics and the whatever come along and they say, there's no evidence there. There's none whatsoever. None. There's no evidence there. This is a pipe dream. It's just to get money out of people's pockets so they can fly over there and keep digging. And there's new news about it has been found. Okay? And some friends came to me and said, you shouldn't share this. This is bogus stuff. I said, let me ask you, did you find that online? Yes, of course. Well, let me tell you what else you can find online. You will find that the brainy people, the experts, believe in evolution and don't believe in creationism.
There you go.
Oh, but they are full of facts. We'll talk about this as we go along. George, I want to shift gears here, ask you to do that, and then I want to have prayer with these folk. Set the stage. We're going to talk about the blood moons. I'm going to kind of hurry through it because you're going to have it on other things. And I brought along a DVD on the 4 blood moons. And you're not going to go home empty-handed. Blessed Father in heaven, we have come to such a meeting as this because we believe you are, that you are good, that you are mighty and powerful, that you are just. And we believe that you have a Son, Jesus, to us. He is only begotten, you say, but He was begotten for us. And we've made a claim on Him because He's made claims on us. I'm thankful to come again here to the Northwest, and I ask you to bless these who have come and those who will receive a video or a CD, DVD, whatever. We need to be blessed. And I'm asking that you help me with my back, help me to stand erect and stand straight and tall through the day. Keep the pain away and give us your Holy Spirit in abundance here, I ask humbly in Jesus' name. Amen. As a reminder, and you don't need to turn yet, we're going to be looking at other verses a bit later. As a reminder, I opened to Acts chapter 2 this morning. I wanted to be reminded of the record of Pentecost that Luke has passed along to the church, and the circumstances and the fact that the believers were gathered together for a reason. Now, the reason in simple terms is that Jesus said, don't go anywhere, don't preach to anybody until you wait for the promise of the Father. And when you have received power from on high, then you go and you preach. So Peter is boldly preaching, and he gets to this one point in his sermon. He says, but this is that which was spoken by the prophet Joel. Now that's Old Testament. I'm in the New Testament, quoting verbatim from the Old Testament. And I'm not going to read all of the verses, but it shall come to pass in the last days, saith God, I will pour out my Spirit upon how much flesh? Come on, all flesh. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your young men see visions. Your old men dream dreams. My servants, my handmaids. In those days I'm going to pour out my Spirit. Now verses 19 and 20 in Acts 2 read like this. And I, this is God speaking. This is heaven speaking through Joel. And Joel is speaking through Peter. And Peter is speaking through Luke. I will show wonders in heaven above, signs in the earth beneath, blood and fire and vapor of smoke. The sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before that great and notable day of the Lord come. There are actually several verses in Scripture that speak of the great day of the Lord and the moon turned to blood. We'll reference some of them. Will the world end on a blood moon? I believe that it will. Will the time of the end, the measured days, I'm posing a question for you to ponder. Will the measured days, 1260, 1290, 1335, will they open with a blood moon? And will they close with a blood moon? Think it through. In his critically acclaimed volume, Worlds in Collision, Emanuel Velikovsky makes a wonderful comparison between the end of the world legends of ancient cultures and apocalyptic prophetic scripture. Quotes from Worlds in Collision. Emanuel Velikovsky. You ought to read him. The clouds that enveloped the Israelites in the desert, the trumpet-like sounds they heard at Mount Sinai, the gradual lifting of the clouds in the years of the shadow of death, are the same elements we find in this Indian legend. We're talking about North American Indian legend. North American. Quotes, the story of the end of the world, as related by the Pawnee Indians, has an important content. It was written down from the mouth of an old Indian. Now this is the way legends were passed down, mouth to mouth. not so much written. And by the way, this is how the Old Testament scripture was passed down, mouth to mouth, for generations. Then along came Moses and began writing some things down. We're told by the old people, this is the Pawnee Indian legend, we're told by the old people that the morning star ruled over all the minor gods in the heavens. The old people told us that the morning star said that when the time came for the world to end, what's the context? The time for the world to end, the moon would turn red. That when the moon should turn red, the people would know that the world was coming to an end. That's meaningful in view of Acts chapter 2. Because the same elements can be recognized in very different settings, we can affirm that there was no borrowing from one people by another. A common experience created the stories, so dissimilar at first and so much alike on second thought. For example, in Joel 2, Peter was quoting, in Joel 2, 800 years before Christ, the earth shall quake before them, the heavens shall tremble, the sun and moon shall be dark, the stars shall withdraw their shining, the sun shall be turned into darkness, and the moon into blood, before the great and terrible day of the Lord shall come. Here's Isaiah. For the stars of heaven, this is 700 years. It's 100 years after, still 700 years before. For the stars of heaven and the constellations thereof shall not give their light. The sun shall be darkened in his going forth, and the moon shall not cause her light to shine. Hear Jesus' own words. But in those days, after that tribulation, the sun shall be darkened, and the moon not give her light. Jesus is referencing Isaiah from 700 years before. In Matthew 24, Jesus again, immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. Whatever that means. And then at Pentecost, Peter quotes Joel, which we have just shared. Maybe you are acquainted through the television with John Hagee. He's... if you ever come across the channel when he's speaking, well, you can't miss him. I mean, that way. And he's got quite a personality, and he's got quite a voice, and he's got quite a hearing. A lot of people listen to John Hagee. Not long ago, he was exposed to this talk and chatter among Christians out there of the blood moons. He didn't know. He freely admits I didn't really, this was not an everyday topic. But the more study he gave to this in the Word, the more he considered what was going on. 4 blood moons, 2 in the year 2014, and we're only 4 days away from the second one. Are you listening? And 2 coming in 2015. I mean, this has to be unusual. It's unusual. They can go back for years and years and years and say, this is called a tetrad, to have 4 blood moons like this in such close association. Something is going on. Christians and other prophetically inclined persons are indebted to Pastor John Hagee, author of the New York Times USA Today bestseller, 4 Blood Moons. I have a copy. I appreciated reading it. You can get one through Amazon for very little. Interested persons can secure a copy online at Amazon.com. So some simple questions are posed. What is a blood moon in simple terms? A blood moon is a lunar eclipse occurring when the Earth comes directly between the sun and the moon. It casts a shadow across the entire face of the moon. The blood red color is caused by the refraction, the bending of light from the sun as it passes through Earth's atmosphere. Dust and other particles in the atmosphere cause the temporary effect of a reddish colored moon. Now, when I was a very youthy youth, there was a blood moon. I don't remember the year, but I want to say 46, 47. I never have taken the time to go back. But I happened to be there as a child. And I can remember very vividly a full moon. And watched as the shadow was moving and it turned red. Impressive sight. Happened to be one of those nights in Alabama that wasn't all clouded over. It's a lunar eclipse. It occurs. Christians, especially students of Bible prophecy, should be aware of Old and New Testament prophets who announce the great day of the Lord, when the sun will be darkened and the moon turned to blood. Prophetic scripture declares the world is going to end on a blood moon. So I want to emphasize that. I think I'll back up to that for a moment. It's a good place to issue a bit of a warning, okay? I have quite a few persons who call me and email me and they say, "Oh, Brother Wheeling, all we have to do is jump ahead in the astronomical tables and see when the next blood moons come, and we can pretty well figure out when the world's going to end." So what's wrong with that logic? Come on. What's wrong with that reasoning? Because NASA and the various astronomical teams out there can tell you when the next solar eclipse, the next lunar eclipse, the next blood moon, they can tell you ahead of time, years in advance, when these things are going to be. By the way, the Mayan calendar, for those who may be interested, was among the most precise instruments on the planet for foretelling these things. So what's wrong with saying, "Brother Wheeling, let's just look ahead and let's count. You say there's going to be 7 last years. Let's see if there's a blood moon in 7 years." What's the problem? Come on.
God's going to reset the clock.
God is going to reset the clock, and He says so. The clock is going to be reset. And so jumping ahead and saying, "Oh, there's a blood moon. The experts have identified it. It's the end of the world." No. Life is not so simple. What is a tetrad? In simple terms, a tetrad is 4 successive total lunar eclipses with no partial lunar eclipses in between, each of which is separated by 6 lunar months, or 6 full moons. Why is that significant? Why is it? What's the 6 months all about? Come on. Spring and fall feasts. And by the way, these blood moons are occurring on the feast dates.
I think the beginning even.
Art thou listening? A lunar tetrad, 4 total lunar eclipses in a row, began the night of April 14 and 15 of this year, 2014. That was the first blood moon eclipse. I got up at 2 in the morning to see, and it was typical Alabama, clouded over and don't fall off the porch deal, you know. The next blood moon is going to occur the night of October 7 and 8. It says 7 and 8 because it comes midnight to morning. If I were you, I'd kind of make myself a little note out of whatever, and I would try to see that. It'll be very visible over North America, Central and South America. All right? Other parts of the planet will be looking from. So here are the dates for the present tetrad. Right here. You want to look at this now. You want to see this. They all occur, every blood moon occurs on a sacred Jewish festival. April 15, October 8. Passover, Feast of Tabernacles. Let's go a year. Passover, Feast of Tabernacles again, April 4 of 2015 and September 28 of 2015. This is the one I want to call attention to right here. Not because it's number 4 in the tetrad, but because of all of these 4 blood moons in the tetrad, this is the only one right here. This is the only one that can be partially seen from Israel. Now that's of interest to me. I could say, woo. Maybe that's a warning to some folks in that part of the world that they better take note. I don't know. I don't know. But I find that interesting. Why do I find that interesting? Because all of these are associated with the land of Israel, with the people of Israel. Are you listening? And when they are going to be in full effect, it will be 100% straight up and down over Israel and Jerusalem. I'm going to be furnishing you this material on a DVD, but also a much more complete study. Remember, the Jewish calendar is a lunar calendar in any year. It's inevitable that a full moon should fall on or near the feast of Passover, Nisan, Tabernacles, Tishri. Nisan and Tishri are the first and seventh months of the Jewish calendar, respectively. I have to stop right here and remind you, most of you are old friends. You've been coming along for years. And many's the time I've stood in front of you and held this up and said, this is a Jewish book. It's written by Jews, to Jews, about Jews. And all of the prophecies in here are centered on Jerusalem time. I could say more right now, but I don't want you throwing anything. Not yet, anyhow. It's somewhat ironic that 3 of the 4 lunar eclipses are not visible, even in part, from Israel. Of this tetrad, the only eclipse that can be seen at all from Israel is the tail end of the September 28, 2015 eclipse, which may be observable for a short while before sunrise. Over and over again, God has said in Scripture that He will not do anything, His doing. He will not do anything without first telling the prophets to tell you and me. Okay? God's not in the business of surprising people. He's in the business of forearming, forewarning people. Before we get the day fully underway, here are some prophetic definitions that I have adopted in my personal studies. Number 1, a prophecy, any prophecy, is a promise. In other words, it's a God prediction before it comes to pass. And if God predicts it, it's a promise. Hope that makes some sense to you. For example, the Exodus was actually a promised prophecy. Here's the think it through question. Was the Exodus a failed promise, or was it a not yet fulfilled promise prophecy? Of course, my position is the Exodus was not the Exodus.
Amen. That's right. It's a type.
The Exodus was a practice session. Here's another. A true prophet is not always correct in his or her personal interpretation of the visions they receive. Some folk can't handle that. Yeah. Both Old Testament and New Testament offer many examples to support this truth. So if I can interject something right here. The Old Testament and the New Testament, written by numerous prophets, reveal that these prophets believed what they were predicting was about to happen in their day. And it didn't. Of course, New Testament tells us, well, they thought it was for their day, but it was really for ours. No, you think it's for yours, but it's not. It's for those who have come to the end of time. 1 Corinthians 10 and verse 11, now all these things happened to them, whoever them was and them is. All these things happened to them for examples. They are written for our admonition, upon whom the ends of the world are come. So I've had to look at a lot of sincere Adventist Christians. You know, I have to be ready to duck. I've had to look at a lot of very sincere Christian people straight in the eye and say, Ellen White was not always correct. Where did you ever get the idea that a prophet can never make a mistake in their understanding? Well, then they're not a true prophet. You need to do some homework in the book.
Amen.
The Apostle Paul sincerely believed, preached, and wrote repeatedly throughout New Testament Scripture that he believed he was living at the end of the world. That was 2,000 years ago. Here's Hebrews 9. Now once in the end of the world hath he, that is Christ, appeared to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself. See, Paul and Peter and all the rest of those folk, sincere, inspired. They believed with everything in them that the world was about to end and Christ was about to return. So I have a question for you. If they didn't believe that the world was about to end and that Christ was about to return, would they have preached with conviction? Would they have left nets and boats and families and friends? No. The answer is no. God is not out to deceive anyone, but neither is God prepared to tell everything he knows. Peter sincerely believed, preached, and wrote repeatedly throughout New Testament Scripture that he believed he was living at the end of the world. Now, once in the end of the world. That's Hebrews 9, but I want to get to Peter. Hebrews 10, still, forsake not the assembling of yourselves together, as the manner of some is, and so much the more as you see the day approaching. In spite of what most sincere forefathers and foremothers believed and taught, the world did not end in 1844, or 1888, or on any other date presumed by sincere Christians, including sincere disciples, sincere apostles, or holy prophets. There are a lot of very sincere people that believed the world was going to end in 1844. It didn't. So we're left with very few choices. God changed his mind. God didn't pass along the right information, or Judy and I on one occasion wanted to see a little more of Australia, and we went down to Adelaide in South Australia. Quite a interesting journey. And the hotel that we stayed in for the night was right near the center of Adelaide. And there's a very large memorial erected there, granite and whatever. And it's giving you the history of Adelaide and South Australia and this. And of course, they got me again. I went over and I read, and it said, on this site in 1844, German immigrants stepped out of the boat and laid the foundation of Adelaide. And I thought, why would they do such a thing? Didn't they know the world was going to end? Nope. And guess what? It didn't. I have many good friends who have turned their backs and walked away because they think I'm against the truth. I'm against the church. I'm against the spirit of prophecy. I'm against. But you know what, guys? Peter, Paul, James, and John said 2,000 years ago, this is it.
That's right.
And they were mistaken, and nobody says they were false prophets. I don't have a problem.
Amen. That's right.
Some folk have a problem. The world didn't end 1844, 1888, or on any other date presumed by sincere Christians, including sincere disciples, apostles, or holy prophets. Just didn't work that way. So this is my take on it. The end is the end. Nothing else. Time does not end before the end actually arrives. The end is the end. I decided to prove my point. So I went to Webster and I looked up the word end. And this is what it says in the dictionary. The point at which something stops or no longer exists. An ultimate extent or cessation. History can serve as a type or shadow of how the world will end, but history is past and the end of the world is future. The fact that you and I are still here means the end hasn't arrived yet. It's really simple. Unless, of course, you're brain locked into 1844 or whatever. Here's a reference in Revelation 6. This is when the seals are being broken open. In the judgment scene, Jesus has come in. Revelation 6:12 and 13. And I beheld, when he had opened the sixth seal, lo, there was a great earthquake. The sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. And the stars of heaven fell to the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs when she's shaken of a mighty wind. I believe the time of the end is going to end with a blood moon. Personally, I believe that the time of the end is going to begin with a blood moon. We'll have more to say about that as we go along here. Reference again, Velikovsky and the Pawnee legend. Quotes, the old people knew also that when the world was to come to an end, there were to be many signs. Among the stars would be many signs. Meteors would fly through the sky. The moon would change its color once in a while. The sun would also show different colors. Velikovsky is sharing all of this. Just so Scripture witnesses have declared, like Joshua, and the sun stood still and the moon stayed until the people had avenged themselves on their enemies. So the sun stood still in the midst of heaven and hasted not to go down about a whole day. Habakkuk says, the sun and moon stood still in their habitation. At the light of thine arrows they went, and the shining of thy glittering spear. All of this is reaching back to Joshua and reaching forward to Messiah's coming. Ezekiel says, and when I shall put thee out, I will cover the heaven, make the stars dark, will cover the sun with a cloud, and the moon shall not give her, the idea is normal light. And Haggai says, for thus saith the Lord of hosts, yet once, it's a little while, and I will shake the heavens and the earth, the sea and the dry land. I will shake all nations, and the desire of all nations shall come. And I will fill this house with glory, says the Lord of hosts. We have some exciting things ahead of us, folks. In Jesus' words, there shall be signs in the sun, the moon, and the stars, and on the earth distress of nations with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring. In his Father's words, whose voice then shook the earth, and now he hath promised, saying, yet once more I shake not the earth only, but also heaven. And this word, yet once more, signifieth the removing of those things that are shaken, as of things that are made, that these things which cannot be shaken may remain. That sounds like a lot of double talk, but it's really not. It's talking about when the sky changes and the earth shakes, there are some people who will not be shaking.
Amen. Right.
The end of the old is the beginning of the new. So I want to use that to get us back here to the board. We really need to talk about this journey that we're on. It's the whole purpose to get to the end. That's it. Jesus said it very simply, he that endureth to the end. Now, we have some folk in this room today who are not simply seniors, they are seniors. When you go traveling and meeting people for 35 plus years, as we have done, the phone rings and Brother Wheeling just wants you to know Mom passed away, Dad passed away. A lot of folk want you to get on a plane and fly and have a funeral. And if I did that, I'd never be home again. You and I have lived long enough believing through all of these years that time just can't go on much longer. It just can't. It just can't. The world can't get worse than it is. Besides that, they're running out of anything to tax us on. So, I'll tell you where I am in this process. When someone calls and they're grief-stricken, they're heartbroken, telling me Mom, Dad's passed away, whatever, I understand. But I want to tell you the thought that goes through my mind is God has blessed them. Because they have gone to rest in a relative time of peace. And God knows where every one of His children lie. Nobody's lost. Nobody's missing. Not in the book of heaven. See, I've come to the point, and age has something to do with it, I've come to the point that I think, oh, what a blessing. They got out before. They went to sleep before. Before what? Before the time of the end. Before. I need to talk some serious talk with you folks. And I've been saying to people, and sometimes it's appreciated, sometimes it's not, but I want to tell you I do not have a single bone in my body that wants to be a martyr.
Amen.
Not one. I have no desire. I would love to go to sleep and wake up and see Jesus coming. That may or may not be the case. That's not for me to decide or determine. That's for God. But I do remind God that I don't want to be a martyr. It is the instinct of every living thing, from a spider that crawls, to a bird that flies, to a person. It is a natural instinct of every living thing to remain living. Yes or no? Yeah. So I have no apologies to make. I desire to remain living, pain-free. All right? That's not for me to decide. I've lived long enough to believe that God does not inflict pain on people. Jesus was heartbroken as He passed from village to village, and He saw the blind, and He saw the lame, and He saw the lepers, and He heard the pain. And He had to stop and help. That's God. That's the real God.
Amen.
A lot of people, millions of people believe God. If you're suffering, the disciples said, who sinned, this man or his parents? That's what most people believe about God. You suffer, God is punishing you. I've lived long enough, thank heaven, to find out my God is not like that. He's not. He's not out to inflict pain. But pain is a consequence of living on this rock. See? Let me ask a question. Let me pose a simple question for you. Jesus said, you shall know the truth, and the truth will make you what? Okay. So if knowing truth can make you free, what does knowing error do for you? It enslaves you. See, for many years in my younger Christian experience, I believed that if a person believed a false doctrine, I've lived long enough, thank heaven, to discover that people are not saved or lost on doctrine. I don't believe the right set of doctrines, and therefore I've got a ticket to heaven. Okay? Well, then it's okay to have false doctrine or untrue doctrine. No, it's not okay, because something that's untrue enslaves your mind, enslaves your body, enslaves your being. That's what's wrong with it. It's not that God says, Oh, he believed 42 false doctrines. He's got to pay for at least 42 years. No. No, there's a reason why we want truth, and there's a reason why we don't want error. Okay? The difficulty is that almost everybody on this planet has been taught and has come to believe things that are not true. Theologically, philosophically, whatever. In whatever. We're all subject to believing and operating on certain beliefs that just really have no basis in fact. A couple of weeks ago, I had a phone call. And one of the secretaries in the office took the call and made the quick pink note and said, I think you better call these folk back. I said, well, did they talk for 20 minutes or? Well, no, it wasn't a very long call, but I could tell they really wanted to speak to you. They didn't want to speak to me, they wanted to speak to you. So I returned the call. And I said, have I met you before? I don't recognize your name. No, but we know you because friends have been sharing some of your DVDs and things with us for quite some time. And we have lots of questions. And I said, could you just give me one? Because I can tell where they are on planet Earth right away. And I said, oh, you're Adventist Christians? Yes, well, we have been for about 3.5 years. And I said, your question suggests that you're having some problems. Yes, we don't go anymore. I said, well, is that because you don't like the preacher? Is that because you don't like somebody? What's the reason you don't go to church anymore? Well, we've discovered that some things that Adventists teach don't square with the Bible. And I said, well, I've been there and done that. I think I know where you're coming from. Can you get over it? Well, don't know. We're looking for the truth. See? And so we conversed a while, and I said, I'll send you some things. But we all need fellowship. We all need church. We all need. And reality is we all need one another. And I said, there's no perfect church. If you're leaving Adventism to find perfection, good luck. Good luck. Perfection exists in heaven. In heaven. And I said, let me just share one or two quick things with you, and I'll send you whatever material I can. I said, you must understand that I meet lots of people in my seminars and travels, and people are phoning a few times a year and saying, oh, Brother Wheeling, would you come and speak to our feast group? We're going to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. We're going to celebrate Passover. We're going, whatever. Would you come and speak? And I have discovered that as I go, accept one invitation and go over here, and I speak, it's Passover, and I just get off the plane back home and the phone rings and somebody says, oh, Brother Wheeling, would you come speak to our Passover group? Well, I'm thinking, I just did that. Oh, no, we don't keep that one. There's this never-ending contention that goes on between you have to keep the right day. You have to keep the right time of the right day. I was in New Zealand on another occasion. Good friends, they would fly in from one of the South Pacific Islands. They would fly in, happened to be there at the time I was there. And He said, "Oh, Brother Wheeling, you know, we live on such and such an island. We live so and so." And Brother Wheeling, the international date line passes right through the middle of the island. Yeah. Yeah. And Brother Wheeling, we have problems. You have problems? Yeah. Because on this side of the date line, the Adventists have already celebrated Sabbath. And they're out mowing the grass. And 100 yards away is the Adventist church on the other side celebrating Sabbath. And the Adventist neighbor is mowing the grass over here and drowning out the music. And everybody's ready to run out and drown all the folks on the other side. Are you listening? I mean, you can't make this stuff up, guys. You can't do it. So when I have traveled a few years and a few miles, and I've had to take in this one and that one, they're all sincere. They're all believers. They all love God. They all love what they believe to be the truth. And I'm saying, Lord, there has to be an answer. And it's there. It's right there in the book. All the answers are in the book. The problem is some folk read it upside down or backward or whatever. And here's God speaking through the prophets about the Sabbath. And how many times have I said to people like you, friends like you, this is a Jewish book, and everything in it is about Jews, including the times, including the Sabbath, including. And it's all about Jerusalem time. And I saw it, and I said, Lord, Lord. So this is what it says. The days are coming, says the Lord. The days are coming, says the Lord. From one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, shall, come on, all flesh come to worship before me. Then there will be no more strife about which day is the Sabbath. If I'm living in Alabama and I need to get to Jerusalem for Sabbath, I'm going to have wings then. They'll be pink. Okay? Or blue or whatever. No. This is exactly what is foretold in the New Testament. Are you listening? This is exactly what is foretold. The days are coming, saith the Lord. There will be one Lord, one faith, one baptism. We have to all come into the unity of the faith. That doesn't happen till Jesus gets here. It doesn't happen. So I have no complaint with the friends who are celebrating Sabbath 2 hours later than Alabama time. I don't have a problem. They can't help that the world is round and turning. See? But the things God has promised all of us, He has promised all of us. And the day is yet to come when there will be perfection in the land. Until then, we do the best we can do. Now, I understand that on the island of Tonga, there was so much commotion, and I don't know if it was all made by Adventists, but there was so much disagreement and haranguing about we keep this day and you keep that day, business-wise and otherwise, that the United Nations has voted to move the line just off the island and let folk live in peace. We hope. We hope. Now, I do not believe that we can go to the blood moons and go to NASA and to the astronomers and whatever and figure out when the world is going to end. I believe there's Old Testament and New Testament scripture, prophetic scripture, that says God's going to change the times and the seasons. So I'm content not to know the day and the hour. Besides that, Jesus says, nobody knows. I don't even know. All right? I'm content not to figure out the day and the hour the world is going to end. The day and the hour Jesus is going to appear. I'm not losing sleep over it. I lose sleep, but not over that. Okay? I find this tetrad of 4 blood moons to be more than just curious. I believe it's a wake up. That's what I believe. I do. I believe it's speaking from the heavens, saying, wake up. Wake up. I find it also interesting that when Jesus told the disciples, you wait here until you receive the promise of the Father, Peter says, blood moon. Some of you might have seen the wonderful DVD that was produced just in recent years about the Star of Bethlehem. Any of you ever seen that one? And the research that was done by an attorney put this beautiful DVD together. Get it, the Star of Bethlehem. And he goes through the history of the time when Jesus was born all the way through till Jesus dies. And he shows on the calendar, because they can move the astronomical calendar back, he shows on the calendar, according to the dates that he believes, Jesus died. That the sun was darkened at 3 in the afternoon. And that night, a blood moon arose. I'm saying, whoa. This is what leads me to believe that God, at the time of the end, is going to open and close these events. And he has to have signs that are so high in the sky, everyone sees them. Yeah. The world can recognize things are going to happen. We've done this, but we're going to do it a little bit differently this time. There's a period of time before there's a period of time. This second period of time is measured in prophecy. It's referred to as 3.5 years. Times in dividing a time, 40 and 2 months, 1,260 days, 1,290 days, 1,335 days. These I refer to as measured days. And this I refer to, in my own thinking, my own study, as the time of the end. You know, we gave you some good old Webster help here. Now, I would enlarge, or can enlarge upon this and say there's really prophetically 7 last years. And I could refer to this as the time of the end. And I don't think I would be prophetically remiss in doing so. But this is not measured in the same sense that this is measured in days. This would be measured in years, but as we have noted, each time I come, folks back there in the Bible didn't measure the same way we do. If you say there are 7 years, well, there are 7 full years. No. It can be 6 years and 1 day and be 7 years according to the Bible reckoning. You listening? So I don't measure here to here in the same way I measure here to here. This you can't. There's no slipping here. It's 1,260 days. It's 1,290 days. It's 1,335 days. Here we're measuring more closely on the measuring stick. But there's a reason for these things in the book. There's a reason why God, I believe, would have you and me, as we approach the end, why God would have us understand this right here. So today, I'm going to take some of the burden that I have carried since 1977 that the Lord laid on my heart. I'm going to put some of it on you. Some of it. And when you hear what we're going to be sharing, I think you would like to carry some of the burden. Because there's a blessing in it. I hardly know where to begin and not get off the track. There is something that is going to kick off, if I might use that expression, this time, right here. Just like the four tetrad, the tetrad blood moons may be some indicator. There are some things that I believe prophetically are set for this time, right here. And we need to recognize what these signs are. If we recognize them, then we'll know something right here. Like Jesus said, when ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, whoso readeth, let him what? Understand. Let them in Judea do something. Get out of town. Okay? That's over here. I'm over here. You're over here. Wherever over here is. This is where we are. So I'm going to say some things that I probably shouldn't say if I were a wise person. But I'm going to share them because I can erase the tape. Okay? The United States is failing as a nation. We're not just in a downward trend. We're over the edge. I could speak for the rest of the day and a few more days and say, so-and-so is to blame and this and that. No. You and I are living in a nation that can send men to the moon but can't build a fence.
Yeah.
Am I getting through to you? The reason is not that we can't build a fence. It's that we are leaving holes and saying, here's a hole. Come on through. We call that, in secular terms, stacking the deck. I've asked people on various occasions, let me ask you this, do you believe if all those folk were Protestants on that side of the fence, do you think they would be coming through? Do you think we would permit them to come through? No. Someone is stacking the deck. Now, you may be angered by it, and I am angered by it. I see people coming across who have no respect for the laws of our land, none whatsoever. And we're going to give them citizenship as though they're suddenly going to have respect for our laws. It's insanity. I see people all the time around me, and people I know, they've lost their jobs, they're losing their houses. Are you listening? And Uncle Sam says, oh, there's a new tax. But illegals, law-breaking persons are crowding our borders. And Uncle Sam says, oh, we have a check waiting for you. And oh, we're going to pay for that. We're going to charge all of the other folk in this country for your medical bills. And you know, I only live 50 miles from the capital of the Confederacy. Do you understand? Forget about it. You and I are outnumbered, outvoted. We cannot change it. There's nothing we can do about it. It's a done deal. What we have to recognize is, what does that mean here?
That's right. That's right.
Something is going on. There is a shift, a power shift taking place. All right? And it's by design. If you ask me, I believe it's by design of and the papacy. There is a shift in power. And that means there's a shift in wealth. I shouldn't say it, but I believe that certain parties came to the front in this country for the express purpose of taking this country down. For the express purpose of breaking us. And that's where we're going. We're going into bankruptcy. That's where we're going. We're going into third world-ism. And it is by design. We're not there yet. You ain't seen nothing yet. Something is going to happen, and we'll enlarge on it, especially after the noon recess, that is going to take the U.S. dollar down. And what does that mean to you and me? Well, I don't have many dollars anyhow, so I won't sink too low. Well, you better count again. You better count again. I'm going to hint at something this morning, enlarge upon it in the afternoon. Almost 10 years ago, the United Nations, the World Bank, the World Trade Organization, the International Monetary Fund, behind closed doors, began to lay plans for a new world order. If you don't know, it was the Vatican that pushed the United Nations into thinking, planning the new world order. The new world order, when it arrives, and it's on the way very soon, when the new world order arrives, you need to know and you need to understand, it is the brainchild, not the stepchild, it is the brainchild of the Vatican. And they are proud of it. And just like the illegal aliens, when the New World Order comes, don't go marching in the street. I'm going to quote Ellen White here. Don't go out and wave placards. Don't get involved in the politics. Don't do it. In Testimonies to Ministers, I've shared with you, and before the day is over, we'll share it again. She says, from what I was shown, this changing of the circulating currency, which is on the way, is not of the devising of God. I was shown that it is the device of Satan for the last days. So about 10 years ago, behind closed doors, serious discussion began to take place between nations at the United Nations level behind closed doors. This was not public fodder. We're all going broke. The United States, first and foremost. And if the U.S. goes down, who goes down? Why does everyone else go down if we go down? We buy all their junk. Stuff, pardon me. I'm sorry, Halloween costumes are junk.
That's right.
The rest of the world is wise enough, smart enough, savvy enough to know that if you and I go down, they're going to pay for it too. And so over the last 10 years, particularly the last 7, more particularly the last 3, okay, they have tried to move this GCR into place. That's Global Currency Reset. The GCR. You will not find 1 in 1,000 Americans who've ever heard of it, know anything about it, and that is because the powers that be do not want the American people to know what's on the way. The American public is virtually unaware of what is about to hit them. All right? And them is you and me. There are at least 31 million Americans by government estimates that have some inkling of what's about to happen. 6 or 7 months ago, that figure was somewhere between 2 and 5 million. But there's an awareness of certain things that has come to the attention of some persons, and they're sharing with their relatives and friends and neighbors and saying, did you know, and have you done this and done that, and do you know about this? And no, well, we can say there are, by government estimates, 31 million Americans, but out of 360 some odd million, that's a drop in the bucket. Most of the people in this country have no idea of the trap that is about to be sprung on them, on us, on all of us. Well, I think it's a good thing. Well, what is this good thing that's in the offing? The U.S. dollar is going to be removed from its place as the global reserve currency. What that has meant for 75 years is that everybody else uses the U.S. dollar as a measuring stick. How do you measure up to the dollar? But in more recent years, it has become apparent with the Federal Reserve printing not billions but trillions of dollars that have zero behind it. It's called fiat money, fiat currency. It means ink on paper. That's what it means. And as the world became aware of what's, forgive me, silly Americans just keep on spending as though it was real money. See, as the world has become aware of it, they have very quietly called their own meetings behind closed doors. Outside of the UN and the cabal, it's referenced to be. Outside of that, certain nations referred to as the BRICS nations, B-R-I-C-S, BRICS nations. 5, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. They have met quietly and deliberately, and they have said, we're not going to turn our money into U.S. dollars anymore to buy oil, to buy anything. We're going to do business among ourselves. You accept my currency and I'll accept yours because I know your currency has something behind it, and I want you to know my currency has something behind it, and that something is gold. And so the 5 BRICS nations met and formed their own IMF, International Monetary Fund, in opposition to the IMF of the UN. As they were meeting behind closed doors, the U.S. found out about it and said, well, if you're going to talk about economy and money and the dollar, we think that we should be invited to be part of the conversation. And the President of the United States got on Air Force One and flew to the other side of the world while those 5 were meeting behind closed doors and said, I'm the President of the United States, I'd like to come in. And he was told, no. I think you should know. I think you deserve to know that since, this is in the last 2 to 3 years, since the five decided to form their BRICS banking association, there are now 123 countries that have joined the BRICS. They let them in. We are not permitted to come through. An ultimatum has been handed down. And the ultimatum is this: we are going to do trade among ourselves because we know that they've got real money and they've got real money and we're going to be paid in real money. And if you, America, if you want to be doing business with us, whether buying or selling, importing or exporting, if you want to do business with us, your dollar is going to have to measure up to our standard. And I could tell you some things that would cause every last hair in your head to fall out. This global currency reset was scheduled in earnest for last April. And at the last moment, the President said no. The U.S. Treasury said no. Why? Because the GAO, the Government Accounting Office, the U.S. Treasury, and the people with calculators in this country figured it out that if we make this change right now, the U.S. dollar is going to lose 20 to 30% of its value overnight, and we are gone. No! Don't let it happen. There were 45 separate blocks by the President and the U.S. Treasury in 30 days to stop the GCR. As we're gathered here today, there is serious talk among the governments of the world and 31 million Americans who somehow were let in on this goings on. There is serious talk while we are gathered here this morning, today, that the U.S. is not going to hold the rest of us up any longer. We're going to push the button. We're tired of this obstructionism. If the American people want to remain in their darkness and stupidity, so be it. Push the button. Now, there's considerable concern. We think that since April, this is the talk from the highest echelons of the U.S. government and Treasury. We think that we might have reduced the threat of 20 to 30% devaluation. Okay? To maybe 2 to 8%. When we spring all of this on the American people, we're going to tell them that it's only 2%. Well, that's not bad. The reality is more likely 8%. There will be a change in the circulating currency, just like Ellen White was shown. Well, what change is there? Well, you can say they've added a little color to this. That's not the change. The change is all of the currency you and I spend and have been passing along to the rest of the world says Federal Reserve Note. You need to know that the charter was made with the Federal Reserve back in 1930, whatever it is. It ran out this year. The Federal Reserve has very quietly, in the last few months, become a part of the U.S. Treasury. I'm looking at you to see if there's, any recognition at all out there of what we're talking about. You do not let the public even sense that there's a problem, because the lines at the banks would be miles long. All right? So the new currency is going to say U.S. Treasury Reserve notes. We brought the reserve over. In short terms, these are referred to as TRNs. Now, I've called the bank several times until my bank manager over there is tired of, he says, Mr. Wheeling, I don't hear anything about what you're talking about. I know you're sincere in all of this, but I haven't seen any of this. I don't know anything about it. I didn't know there's going to be new currency. I said, well, all I'm asking, sir, is that the morning, the day, the hour you see the new currency in your teller's windows, please call and tell me, because they're coming. No, they're not going to say you have 24 hours to turn in your old Federal Reserve notes. No, that's not how it's going to be done. But as you go to the bank and you do ordinary business at the bank, they're going to take in the Federal Reserve notes, and those will be shredded and burned. And you and I are going to be spending a new currency. And it's going to say United States Federal Reserve note. All right? And supposedly this new money is going to have assets behind it. We're going to talk more about this after the noon recess. You better not eat anything. You might lose it. As we exchange, all the new currency will have its serial number on every bill. Are you listening? Do I have your attention? You have been hearing that, well, the federal government can spy on everything you're doing. They can read all your emails. They can look through a hidden camera on your TV at home and see everything that's going on in your house, and they can. They can turn your phone on when it's not even turned on and listen to everything going on in your pocket, in your car, in your house. Yeah, this is the real deal, guys. Well, I don't want them listening. Good luck. Every new vehicle sold in this country will have a tracking device. You will be tracked whether you want to be or not. They will know where you are. Not only that, when you stop at the 7-Eleven and buy a snow cone, they will know which flavor you bought. I am sincere. Now to the new currency. Every bill that every American receives through his or her bank has a serial number on it. And it will be tracked by the supercomputers from the moment you receive it until you die. Every penny you spend, for whatever reason, is going to be tracked by supercomputers. They don't have to have people sitting there, well, he bought a snow cone. No. And let me tell you what the supercomputer can do. I go online on my laptop at home, and I say, solar panels. So I'm looking and reading about the new improvements in solar panels. Okay. And next time I sit down at my computer and I'm in a totally different web address, okay? I'm just looking and all of a sudden a pop-up over here. Solar panels. I'm saying, wait a minute. You and I are about to be marked people. Marked people. You go to the bank, you are marking yourself. You are saying, here I'm is. I can't change that. You can't change that. Ellen White said, don't get involved with the politics when this happens. Because there are going to be protests, there are going to be all kinds of things going on out there. You're not going to be happy, I'm not going to be happy. Money, I'm quoting, will soon depreciate in value very suddenly when the reality of eternal scenes opens to the senses of men. Yeah. So, somebody has a master plan. And I believe that many of the people in the United Nations and the various whatever, I believe they're trying to do what they believe is best for mankind. Believe to be doing what's best for whatever. But there's an evil mind behind it all. And so, let me have your fullest attention. I believe this door, when it opens right here, and it could be momentary now, this is the door that Ellen White was speaking of when she said the work that the church might have done in times of ease and prosperity, she will be forced to do under the most forbidding and difficult circumstances. I believe these are going to be forbidding and difficult because I believe the dollar is going this way. America is going this way. The BRICS folks are going to be going this way. By the way, Germany just joined the BRICS. You better say, uh-oh. They're supposed to be our allies. We pulled their backsides out of World War II. Germany just joined the BRICS. Now, for 3, 4, 5 years, I have been passing along material to you, knowing that you're probably not going to understand what you're looking at. So I came today with another one of these pictures showing the metal man of Daniel 2 and the 4 beasts. And okay, we're going to get there, but we're going to see it altogether differently than you've seen it. I've put this into your hands and I've said, look, in Daniel chapter 4, the heathen pagan king Nebuchadnezzar is given a second dream. Now he recalls the first dream and he remembers Daniel. And he sends word for Daniel to come. Oh Daniel, you who are in charge of communicating with the gods. I had a dream, Daniel. Tell me what it means. Daniel listened to the king's dream. He could recall this one, and Daniel said, King, I'd like to bow out on this one. What do you mean bow out? It's not good. It's against you. I command you to tell me. Oh, I don't want to tell you. I command you to tell me, okay? Here goes. You're the great king. You're the great tree. All the birds, all the beasts, everybody comes to you because you are buying and feeding them. You're this great tree, just like you're the head of gold. But in your dream, O king, you watched until a watcher and a holy one, in plain English, a timekeeper in heaven, shouted, cut down the tree. Now, who's the tree? Number one. Cut down the tree. But the watcher and the Holy One says, put a band of brass and iron around the stump. 40, 50 years I've wrestled with it. What in the world? What's the brass and the iron? What's the brass? What's the iron? Why the band around this? You're going to cut down the tree? Well, he's going to leave a little bit of him alive. Three or 4 years ago, I'm going back over Daniel 7. We're going to look at this. You want to be here. We're going to look at this. Just like there were 4 metals in the image, there are 4 beasts in Daniel's first vision. There's the lion, there's the bear, there's the leopard, and there's the beast. And so when you get to Daniel 7, verses 7 and 8, and you get the descriptive, the picture, the word picture of what the beast looks like, he has teeth and nails of iron and brass. And I'm saying, whoa. I've heard that before somewhere. And so I've indicated, and you're going to get the chart again in the handouts. I've indicated that the brass is China. All you have to do is trace it through. The brass is China, and the iron is Europe. We've got the euro on this side as a balance to the basket of currencies in the West, and we've got the renminbi, the Chinese yuan or renminbi, at the top of the basket in the East. And so these are going to balance the world. These are going to control the finances of the world, just like the U.S. has controlled the world economy. And it says pointedly in Daniel 7, this beast with teeth and nails of iron and brass will stamp the residue with his feet. He's going to rip and tear. Well, who's going to be ripped and torn? See. You and I are part of a nation that is in default. It's too far gone. Glenn Beck, before he was pushed out on Fox News, he was making a pretty big deal about the fact that we're 15 trillion and we're on the way to 16 and we're on the way to 17. And folk, contact your congressmen and your senators and tell them no more. So I sent him an email. I said, Glenn, give it up. Let them print all they want to print and send me another check. There's no way, Glenn, they can pay this back. There is no way to pay it back. When we talk a little further along, I'll show you how they're going to try and pay it back. How they're going to promise they can pay it back. But they can't. So I want to talk money and prophecy with you for much of the day, not because I want to talk about money, but because I want to talk about what it is expected, that heaven expects of you and me here. I didn't say here. This is a different story. This is under totally different circumstances. It's here. So this is what we're going to talk about. Not right now. This is what we're going to talk about. We have an expression, game changer. Everybody knows what that expression means. A game changer. How about a paradigm shift? Yeah. That's what a game changer is. How about once in a lifetime? How about golden opportunity? How about last chance? That's what you and I have to talk about. We must talk about it so that you can do whatever it is you and your family are going to do for yourselves. And maybe you want to join the Martyrs Club. I don't. For several years, we've been giving you pieces of paper that says, you know, when a crisis comes, these are the first 100 things to disappear in the stores. Right here. That ought to be a clue to somebody. Maybe you ought to be picking up some of this from time to time and kind of putting it away. Are you listening? So I'm going to close with this very current experience. We have some longtime friends in Colorado. They do business all the time in Denver, but they live over on the western slope, way up high. While they're over here in the middle of a winter storm in Denver, when the storm was past, and it was a bad one, and they got back home, they had to virtually turn around and go back to Denver because there was property damage, roof damage, windows blown out, fences torn down, a real storm. And so back in Denver, husband says to wife, honey, get over to Walmart and get the stuff we got to have to put life back together. So wife goes to Walmart, Denver, Colorado, recently. And she just passed through this experience, and she phoned me with her cell phone from the Walmart parking lot. And she said, Charles, I'm shaking. I said, what's wrong? She said, you know, I had to buy all of these supplies in Walmart. And one cart wouldn't do it, so I had to get 2 carts. Took me forever to get through the line. And I'm going through the parking lot on the way to my vehicle, and I see a guy with a Walmart vest on coming out, and I thought, boy, they're really nice. They're going to come help me put my stuff in the vehicle. And the guy comes out. She has the trunk open. The guy comes out, and he pulls out a camera, and the first picture is of her license plate. The second picture is of her. The third picture is of basket number 1 and basket number 2. Never said, how do you do, good morning, good afternoon, goodbye. Turned and went back in. Do you understand? Do you understand when crazy people like Glenn Beck get on TV, national television, and say, go buy some underwear and some socks while you can? That it's not just fluff. He's not just talking out of his head. The things that you and I still have a measure of freedom to do, but you don't do it in 2 big baskets at the same time. You put Leon over on that side and you say, Leon, you put a little bit in your basket and I'll put a little bit in mine. Leon, we will not check out together. I'm serious. As Elder Hoffman used to say, serious as a heart attack. I'm serious. The time has come for you and me to stare reality in the face, because it's already staring us in the face. Okay? Now, some of you may have other plans. They were just canceled. You need to stay by so we can have some serious conversation. And it will be backed up in the Bible and in the writings. And you will see, wait a minute, that's exactly where we are. Jesus said, you can know where you are when you see this and this and this and this. All the this and this and this has come, folks. It's not coming. It has arrived. And we need to talk about it. And I have been known to say to you in years past, I might not make it back. It's very likely you and I will not have this same meeting again in exactly this way. Because I'm about to be very busy. And I want you to be very busy. We're going to talk about what that means. I mean, real, practical, what does that mean? Okay? For yourself and your family and for the cause, what we're going to do. I think you're going to be real surprised by some of the things we're going to share. Father in heaven, another day this planet turns. Another day we have a breath yet to take. Another day you have given us to think, pray, and act. I'm asking you to bless these people. They have come here for light. I pray that there will be light found here. That you will bless each one of us. Make us more sure today of Christ than the day before. We're going to take this time, Father, for a feeding, a meal. I ask you to bless our gathering. And when we return, please keep us alert and aware. Help us get through this day with meaning and meaningful purpose. And I ask it humbly in Jesus' name. Amen.